So, what is mental health and why are we having this discussion? So, when you are looking at, your peers, your friends, the people that you go to school with, the people that you work with, you can't really tell if someone is battling an internal battle. You can't tell that they are mentally ill. It is, usually, invisible, but has huge impacts on your life and your friend's life, your parents' life. Mental illness is defined as a person's condition with, in regards to their psychological and emotional well-being. The most common ones that people tend to focus on are anxiety and depression. 60% of people with mental illness won't seek out help because of a stigma surrounding mental illness. And there's a lack of understanding and this misbelief that adds to the stigma and, puts it on a higher pedestal. And it is a barrier and this fear of stigma that discourages people from really getting the help that they need and that they deserve. So, we're going to talk about stressors. There's many causes of mental health, like genetic makeups, so if you're predisposed to a mental health disorder, social factors like bullying, living conditions, abuse, death, or even, family trauma and other trauma experiences. So, what are stressors? We hear that word all the time, but what exactly does it refer to? Stressors are defined as internal and external experiences that can affect individuals in a variety of different ways. These stressors create physical and mental challenges for the individual that may impede on their life. Responses to these stressors can have a, huge negative impact for the individual and can affect the people around that you love. Stressors can also lead to developing negative habits like overeating, sleeping too much or sleeping too little, which is known as insomnia. And it creates personality changes like irritability and being annoyed all the time. Stressors can also cause individuals to develop neurological conditions that, can develop into mental disorders like chronic anxiety or OCD. So I just want to take a second and ask if you're comfortable sharing, what are some of your life stressors, if you have pinpointed them already. So, if you're not comfortable sharing, that's completely okay. I know not everyone wants to share, but if you could just take a second and maybe type it in the chat. School, yeah, that's a huge stressor. We all, there's so much homework and exams, finals are coming up, state exams, those are all big stressors in our lives. Yeah, as Magda said, if you're not comfortable sharing with everyone here, you could send a message to me personally, and I don't have to say your name either. So the biggest one I'm seeing is school. Uh, school is a huge one. We have this added pressure from teachers and our parents. We want to succeed and do well in life, especially if, you're trying to figure out your life path and where you want to go, whether it's college or trade school or, not going to college is not a huge option. So school is a huge one and it's a big stepping stone in our lives. So, what are the common causes of stress? There are many causes of stress, like we mentioned before, which are, some are internal, some are external. The ones we have listed here on the slides are some of the most common stressors that affect a majority of individuals. Um, the things on this list may even affect you personally. And sometimes we have these constant worries of stress that, we may not even consciously be aware of. So it's good to sit down and examine yourself and think about all the possible stressors that we may not even have thought of or even considered. So some additional stressors that are not even listed here, can be being unhappy with your job, working long hours, or, studying for long periods of time, which can lead to burnout. And burnout can lead to, anxiety and depression and a lot of other mental disorders as well. If you bear too much of a responsibility as a student Or, if you have household responsibilities like taking care of your siblings or even your parents or your grandparents, if you're in an internship, balancing school and an internship and work, or bigger issues like discrimination or racism. Um, so we also want to discuss how to alleviate the stress. I want everyone to take a 1 minute and type in the chat what you do when you're stressed. It could be anything. It could be something that you might find silly but works for you. And by sharing this with others, it could actually show other people that there are other outlets to alleviate your stress. So you could take 30 seconds to 60 seconds just to type in the chat. Again, feel free to, personally message me or directly into the whole chat. You draw. Wow. I wish I had the artistic ability to draw. Gardening and working with my plants or knitting and these are great ways. I live in an apartment, so there's no way for me to garden, but if I had the ability to garden, I definitely would. That sounds really interesting. Do you garden like fruits and vegetables, or do you mainly just do the greenhouse plants? Hanging out with friends, that's a huge one. It's very important to have social interactions, especially because with COVID, we've all been isolating for so long. It's super great to have that social interaction and meet new people. Sports is a great way. We're going to talk about, moving your body. Crocheting, very few people that I know that like crochet, but that's a very interesting hobby. Working out is a great one. Oh, that's so cute. Veggies and houseplants. Yes, we all need some green life in our life. Okay, perfect. So, why and how do we approach this problem? And we're going to discuss stress management. So, there are many ways to look at stress and how it affects your life. It could be a deep rooted effect, on how we act and how we treat others and how we perceive life. It's important to try to alleviate the stress so it doesn't control us and manipulate us. So, stress is linked, unfortunately, to many causes of death, like, heart disease, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, stroke, and, it does lead to mental health issues like anxiety and depression. So, it's important to reduce our stress by taking action of this. So, how do we do this? You could start by taking control, addressing the fact that there is a mental health issue at hand. So, you have to set boundaries for yourself, be able to say no and know when to stop. Know how much you need to study in one day. If you tell yourself that you're only going to study for 3 hours, then at the end of those 3 hours, be able to shut the notes, shut the laptop, and disconnect from what you are doing, and find that limit and move on to the next activity. Exercise daily, like, some people have said, working out and playing sports, even getting a 15 to 20-minute workout, which is recommended. You take that time out of your day to focus on yourself and get your body moving and pumping and get that, muscles, and just really focus on yourself. Have a proper balanced diet, get those green veggies in, but also help yourself to a cookie or some ice cream to reward yourself for all the hard work that you do. Find a hobby. A lot of people have listed, crocheting, gardening, working out, drawing. Those are all ways to kind of find something that, you could tune in on and not focus on the other stresses that you have. At the end of the day, you could enjoy a nice bubble bath, maybe have a dance party in your room to your favorite playlist or journal. I actually want to talk about journaling for a second because it's something that I personally do at the end of the day. And I find it's really helpful when I'm able to kind of jot down my, thoughts and feelings that I've experienced in that day because it helps me control symptoms and prioritize my problems, list out my fears. And once you list out all the things that are bothering you internally, then you could understand, how to move forward, how to proceed, what can you do to overcome the situation that you were facing. Now, there's no right way of journaling. Some people think that they have to write out a detailed list of what they did in the day. No, it could be keywords, small short sentences. It could be 3 words. There's no proper way of doing it, but as long as you are listing out how you're feeling, it can help you. Now, we understand that bubble baths and journaling, they're great outlets, but they're not effective in the long run if you've been diagnosed with a real mental illness, which leads us into this discussion of, you know, different types of stress management and seeking professional help. So, one way of dealing with, stress is the 4 A's of stress management. Now, this does not work for everyone, but it is something that you can use, in predictable stressors. You and there's a saying, you could either change the situation or change the reaction. So, the first A is to avoid unnecessary stress. Now, it is not healthy to avoid situations that can be addressed because they do end up building up. However, there are stressors that can be avoided. So you could learn how to say no. You have to know your limits and be able to distinguish between the shoulds, the musts, and when possible, you have to know how to say no when you're taking on too much. You could also avoid people that stress you out. Having a conversation and having communication with people about how they make you feel is super important. And if they hear you out, but they don't comprehend you, then you should limit that relationship so that they don't add this pressure onto you. You could also take control of your environment. For example, if traffic makes you nervous and you just absolutely hate traffic, you have this option of maybe leaving the house earlier so that you could avoid it, or maybe making a playlist to make your traffic experience a little bit more enjoyable. Um, another example is, especially with COVID, people are very anxious to go to grocery stores. You could actually have the groceries delivered to you. However, it comes at a cost of maybe a delivery fee. And also analyzing your schedule, which we will get into later in the workshop. The second A is altering the situation. If avoiding doesn't work, you could alter the situation by expressing and communicating how you feel. So the first step is being assertive and communicating your concerns with others so that they know how you feel. Because if you keep it in and you don't let other people know, they won't know how they're affecting you. For example, if your friends, are being too loud, in a dorm room or in the library, and you're trying to study for an important exam, like a lot of us have finals coming up, it's important to kind of set your ground and tell them that you need to study and that you have an exam, and ask them nicely to, find a new place to talk or to quiet it down. Be willing to compromise too. So it's important to find middle ground. And if you're asking someone else to change for you, you have to be willing to do the same in return. And another one is creating a balanced schedule. If you are all work and no play, you have no social interactions and you have no balance, it can lead to prolonged burnout, which again we've said leads to a lot of other anxieties and depression. The third A is adapt to the stressor. So if you can't change the stressor, try adapting to the situation given to you and change your outlook and your expectations. So you could try this by reframing the problem. So you have to view the stressful situation from a more positive perspective. For example, if you're mad about being stuck in traffic or being late, look at this as an opportunity to pause for a minute or an hour. I live in New York City, there's a lot of traffic here. So take the time, to listen to your favorite, podcast or in, audiobook, or put on your favorite playlist and jam out to your favorite songs and really try to enjoy the alone time that you have. You could roll the windows down and enjoy the view and the scenery, because how often do we actually spend time outside anymore? And look at the big picture. Will the issue that you have, on hand matter in a day, in 1 month, in a year, or even 5 years? If the answer is no, it's so much better to just let go of the stressful situation and focus that energy onto other matters. And practice gratitude. This is a huge one that we will cover, at the very end, but it's take a moment, even right now, mentally, to just reflect on all the things that you are, appreciative of and grateful for, because it can change your perspective on a lot of things. And the fourth A is to accept the things that you cannot change. There are things that you just can't avoid. There's things that you just have to accept, like unfortunately death and illness. And it is very difficult to do and it will take time, but it is necessary. And it's, at the very last stage. So it doesn't happen right away. So you can't try to control the uncontrollable. You can't control people's behaviors and the news and social media. Try to focus on the things that you can grasp and can change on your own and with the people around you. And use the stressor to your own advantage by growing from it. And you have to learn from the mistakes and reflect on how you could grow. Let go of this anger and resentment if you are feeling it. Get rid of this negative energy. It will make you feel so much better and it will allow you to progress and move on further in life. And the last thing is share your feelings. It's so important to talk to someone about how you're feeling. So, seeking professional help is a great option, which leads us into this next slide. So, seeking professional help. Sometimes the outlets that I've listed, like the 4 A's and the journaling and all the hobbies that we've acquired and exercise, they're not enough. It's important to recognize that you may need outside intervention from counselors, licensed or certified therapists, and you have a lot of hotlines at your disposal. Talking or therapy can help improve your mental health because it provides you with the tools that you need to cope and improve your situation. So therapy is, confidential. It's a safe space for you to talk through your life challenges, like breakups, school issues, family struggles. If you're suffering from a diagnosed, illness, you know, or abuse or any other traumas that you're trying to find. However, cost can be a concern for people, especially with the pandemic, which is why, all of these links that I've provided for you on the slide are, free and for access for everyone, of all ages. They're all confidential and they all provide support for your needs. They're real people on the phone with you through text, through email, or actually talking over the phone, and they help mitigate situations as best as they can and offer you advice. So on the bottom, you could see Open Path Psychotherapy Collective. They are a nonprofit that matches middle and low income people and families with affordable mental health services in your area. So if you don't want to reach out to a hotline and you actually want to regularly see a therapist, you could reach out to the service and enter in your zip code, and they match you with an affordable person that you could go see on a weekly basis. Now, it varies by state and provider, but rates range from $30 to $50 per hour compared to the $100 or $300 fee other providers charge you, even with insurance. So this is a great tool for people to use if they are, if they don't have insurance or they just can't afford the therapists in their own area. So feel free to utilize these sources to better your mental health because they're here, they're available. And at the end of the day, getting help is the best thing that you could do for yourself. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dee Dee. Thank you, Nicole. That was very edifying. So next, we will talk about time management and all the things that come with it. So are you good at time management? Do you wish you were better at time management? You can feel free to say it in the chat or message me or Nicole directly about your time management skills and how you feel about time management. You can also like keep adding to the chat as I go on for the presentation. Okay, so, oh, you think you're okay? Better than I used to be. I get easily distracted as well. I understand that. I feel like that is one of the biggest hurdles with time management. I use Google Calendar too. We will get into that. I know it is hard not to go down a rabbit hole. Like maybe you get distracted, you want to look something up, and then you start snowballing and like you're curious about everything outside of what you need to do. Better tools, more consistency. Yeah, that's really important. We'll get into that. Getting distracted. Yeah. Google Calendar. Okay, Google Calendar for the win. I will also tell you about other resources, but Google Calendar is great. So poor time management can cause a lot of stress. So it's like very important to manage that stress for time management. There are many ways to manage your time, and all your answers were great. I will add to that. There's a lot of apps you can actually use to, oh, you use a bullet journal. That's really good. There are many apps as well that you can use to keep track of what you have to do. You can also put your phone on do not disturb so that all the calls and texts and notifications don't make a sound and distract you from what you were doing. You can use a timer, a stopwatch, or an alarm to manage your time and alert you to whenever a period of time has passed. There's also an app called Flora Forest, which Nicole told me about. And it basically, you can have it on for a period of time. And when you are on your phone, it gives you a plant that like starts dying when you pass that time and you stay on your phone. And when you get off that phone, the plant starts thriving and growing. It's really interesting. You can also block sites on your computer, so that is another way to manage your time. So if you tend to veer towards certain websites, like you're on Facebook or scrolling through blogs or Vogue or whatever you do, and you know that's taking away from your time, you can block those sites. You can also deactivate your social media sites. I know Instagram, Facebook, I think like TikTok, you can deactivate your account for a certain amount of time and then you can like go back after. So if you have like finals, which I know is happening for a lot of people, or any tests and you need to study, you can just deactivate your social media accounts for that amount of time. So staying on schedule. So as some people said, there's physical planners, you can use a journal, you can have a Google Calendar, anything like that. It is just important to have a schedule so that you can see all your appointments and your responsibilities in order for you to plan your day accordingly. So I know a lot of people say Google Calendar. I use Google Calendar. I put everything on my appointments, tests, homework, classes. I also like tutor students. I put that all in my Google Calendar and it also alerts me 10 minutes before the actual appointment that I have so that I remember what I need to do. It's very useful. It's easier when you have all your different like appointments and responsibilities on one thing. So if you use a journal, keep it all in a journal. If you use Google Calendar or Microsoft Outlook Calendar, put it all in there so that you don't, because if you diversify all your responsibilities and use like a bunch of different journals and books and everything, you can lose track of what you need to do. So it's better to keep it all compact and in, one form or one source. Okay, bye. You can also boost your productivity by listing all your chores and tasks for the day and check them off as you finish in order to have a visual aid of your progress. So whether you list it out on an electronic device or have it on a sticky note or anything like that, as long as you can check it off and you can see your progress, that gives you tangible evidence that you are doing the work and you are able to actually get most of it done. So you don't feel overwhelmed or discouraged if you cannot finish everything. So don't stress if you can't finish everything. That happens to most people, almost everyone. You can't get everything in a day done. So life happens, events happen, things get in the way. When it comes to schoolworks or academics or working on projects, if you can, you should try to have your workspace separate from where you lie down or relax. And you should also keep your workspace neat and tidy, or at least keep it in such a way where if you are going to be in your workspace, it won't be distracting. So if your desk is messy, that's fine. If your desk is super clean, that's fine. But just have it in a way where you can use that desk and it's actually helping you be productive. It's also important to have a consistent study routine. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's easier for me if, from a certain time to a certain time, I'm able to study at that time, like every day or almost every day. It just helps me create this routine where when it's a certain time in the day, I know like this is the time where I can study, and your brain sort of absorbs that information and you get into that habit. And you also have to be honest with yourself if you can handle studying in your room or with your family or with your friends. If you can and you have the resources, try to create a study space that is separate from your hangout space or where you hang out with your friends or where you are with your family. If you can't make your own space, try to immerse yourself in a working mindset. So even if you are in an environment with a lot of distractions, you can still focus on what needs to be done. If you would rather have a study partner or study with a group of friends, you can make a Facebook group, you can make a group me, you can there's a lot of different ways. You can even use like a group chat on your phone in order to communicate with your peers and have study groups. You just have to make sure that the quality of your work isn't impeded by having a study group, because I know some people can't work with other people. They can't work with their friends because they will be distracted and they want to socialize. So you just need to be honest with yourself. Can you work alone? Can you work with your friends? So next we will talk about time audit. This may be a new term. If you know the term, you can feel free to say it in the chat. Like, I've heard of this. But basically, time auditing is where you keep track of your time over a period of time for several days. And with that information, it gives you a clear picture of how you spend your time and what most of your days go towards. So this allows you to examine how you spend your time as opposed to how you think you spend your time or how you want to spend your time. You need to see it's important to see where your time goes in order for you to understand what's eating up your day and see your true productivity and what actually impacts it. For example, you might think that you spend time checking your email for about 15 to 30 minutes in total, but it could be that you check your email for 10 minutes multiple times a day. And for example, if you're doing that like 6, 7, 8 times a day, that could be an hour or more of you checking your email, but you don't even realize it because you do it in such small chunks. And that also happens if you just need to go on your phone for like 10 minutes because you're distracted or you want to look something up. That like adds time and that eats up your day. That's why time auditing is important, so you can see what you're actually doing. Because it doesn't feel like a lot, but it adds up and it eats a whole chunk of your day. You can also set a time list for a task, and it allows you to work without procrastinating and with less distractions because your focus will be on keeping in line with that time list. It's also important to plan ahead. So you don't want to wake up without a plan or without something to do. It's important to focus on what's necessary and what needs to be done. This lets you finish your tasks earlier so that you can have more time for yourself. So whether you schedule your tasks for the week, a week ahead, or for the week the night before that week starts, or first thing in the morning every day, at least allow yourself to have an idea of how your day is going to look like based on what needs to be done. It paints a bigger picture for yourself. So you should tackle the important, time consuming, or mentally exhaustive tasks when you have the most amount of energy or motivation. Usually that's in the morning for a lot of people, but for some people it's in the afternoon. For some people it's night. Some people it's after they eat lunch or they listen to music. Everyone is different. Everybody has different circumstances. Everyone is motivated in different ways. So all you need to do is learn what works for you and how to take advantage of that. Also, don't forget to take time for breaks and to relax. You shouldn't force yourself to work harder than you have to. Don't overwork yourself. Your health and your peace of mind matters. So don't compromise that for the sake of just getting work done. And that leads to the next topic, which is perfectionism. So stop being perfect. Are you a perfectionist? Do you take time to really think about what you're going to do, and maybe almost it becomes obsessively so due to perfectionism? You can say it in the chat or message me or Nicole directly if you think you're a perfectionist or you strive to be a perfectionist. And you can also say why you think you are a perfectionist or how it impacts you. Or just state if you think you are a perfectionist. Yeah, you can just talk about that in the chat. You're scared of mistake. I understand that. It is really paralyzing to worry about the mistakes and how someone will judge you. That's understandable. Not too worried. That's a good mindset to have, to not be too worried about them. Yeah. So I will continue. According to Harvard Business Review, perfectionism can often be a double-edged sword. You are able to do high level, high quality of work, but sometimes it can lead to fears of inadequacy, leaving you unable to get work done. So like you said, you're scared of the judgment. It is good to have that perfectionist idea, but don't let it be so strong that it cripples you and leaves you unable to do your work. Having a tendency towards perfectionism doesn't always mean you can manage your time. Sometimes perfectionists are actually the worst at managing their time, and they struggle with keeping up with their tasks. On top of that, perfectionists can often overwork themselves and take on too many tasks at once, piling on more stress. This isn't to say perfectionism is a bad quality, because it's really not, nor is it to say that only perfectionists struggle with this. But it is important to recognize that it's a situation that a lot of perfectionists actually have and can often face. The refusal to accept anything less than perfection can be flawed. There is a difference between demanding perfection in everything you do, as opposed to striving for excellence and working to the best of your ability. Senioritis, yes. That is the worst. I understand senioritis. That resonates with me. I was very bad with that. That's good. It's good to work at it. Yeah, that's very good. So psychologist Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, PhD, noted some common characteristics of perfectionists. One of them is that, and these don't apply to all perfectionists, nor does it apply to only perfectionists, but these are qualities that tend to come up in perfectionists. One of them is that you keep ideas and projects to yourself until they are fully formed. You feel as if you can't reveal or share what you have in mind or what you are going to do unless every part of it is planned. Another quality is that you are unable to relax. Sometimes you feel restless and driven, and although from the outside, it looks like you are a hardworking workaholic, underneath it's, as she calls it, deep-seated perfectionism. The last one I will mention is procrastination. This is actually something, oh, how to know you are a perfectionist. I'm saying these qualities, and some of these qualities will help you see if you are a perfectionist or how those perfectionist tendencies and ideas show up in your actions. So some people might not think they are a perfectionist, but you still could have a more perfectionist mindset, even if it's not clear. And I will also go into that with procrastination. So from an outsider's perspective, procrastination can look like laziness, distractibility or indifference or just having an air of nonchalance, but it's often due to a fear that you can't meet your own standards or that you will make a decision you will later regret. This is just a small list that perfectionists can have. What we can assess from this, though, is that bundled together, these are qualities that will lead to you wasting time. As a perfectionist, when these characteristics show up, the inability to make a decision, the inability to fully share your ideas because they're not perfectly formed, the procrastination because you are scared of getting into that project, this leads to wasting time because you're not taking advantage of the time you have because you're spending so much time ruminating and thinking about all the different possibilities in order to control for them. So the cost of planning and fearing not being perfect is leaving you bereft of time. It's taking up your time. So imagine planning and having all these robust, amazing ideas and not doing them until every aspect of them is formed. Only to not have enough time to actually educate, to actually execute these ideas, and you end up turning in what looks like messy slipshod work because you ran out of time. I can give an example. I had a friend, he is a perfectionist, and he had a paper that was due, and it was like a 20-page, very important paper. This was in university, and he was a perfectionist, and he had to have every aspect, every part of that paper planned out before he even started writing it. And so he wrote the paper, and it took him so long that he had to get an extension from the professor, and he was still planning it because he was just scared of writing. He needed to have it perfect, that he ended up turning his paper. And also he lets me say this story, so this is not a breach of privacy. He ended up turning in this paper after the extended due date. And not only that, the teacher took off 20% because it was so late. And the teacher told him on his paper, he wrote, "This would have been a 95%, but you turned it in so late, I had to take off 20%. That's a 75." He went from an A to a C because his perfectionist tendencies like paralyzed him. He couldn't start the work. That's something that you don't want to have. That's a quality that you don't want to cultivate because it will keep you from being able to get your work done. So as a perfectionist, or if you see you have these type of qualities where you procrastinate to the point of no return, essentially, you need to shift your mindset so you can maximize your time. So it takes time and work, but you have to adjust your standards. Make sure you are using your time wisely and remind yourself that it is better to do a little bit every day. And at the end, you will be much more satisfied and happy with the work you've done if you do it in time. And also, just because you think it's flawed work does not mean it is flawed work. And I think sometimes you have to look at it from an outsider's perspective. Even though it's not perfect to you, that does not mean you did not do amazing work. Would therapy help with that? Yes, it would. So remember, we are not experts. And although I am talking to you about perfectionism and time management, these are things that you should, if you can't afford it, to get a therapist or a psychologist, a psychiatrist, some sort of professional to work on these things with. So I'm not an expert. This is done off of research that I have been doing along with Nicole, but there are professionals that you can go to for this. Also, you should create a checklist so you can keep on task with your work, run your ideas by with trusted colleagues or peers. Stop ruminating and worry about what you have to do. If you do a little every day, you can get in the groove of whatever project or work you have. And when you go to people you trust, like your peers, your colleagues, your professors, and your teachers, to run your ideas by them, they can help steer your mindset and help you with what you need to do so you're not left alone thinking about it, knowing that it has to be perfect, but not doing anything about it because you don't know where to start. And you also have to understand that imperfection is inescapable. So instead of having maladaptive behaviors about that fact, know that you can still do your best, even if it's not perfect. Also, this is said a lot, and this is a cliche, but it does have universal appeal because it is true that no one is perfect. And rationally, we all know that. We all know like no one is perfect. So to expect nothing short of perfectionism is so harmful to you physically and mentally. You have to have a positive perspective and know that what you do is good enough. And that in itself is a pretty perfect perspective to have. So habits, what kind of habits are you going to try to cultivate and work on based off what we have been telling you? Like what things do you want to work on? What flaws do you think you have? You can feel free to say it in the chat or message me or Nicole directly. Anything about good habits that you want to work on. Developing these habits will help you build good skills for managing your time. It is a skill that needs to be cultivated. Good habits, they change your perspective, they help you form even more good habits, and eventually that will take over your bad habits. Good habits solicit more good habits. And if you make a mistake or mess up, know that you can always improve and try again at any stage of progress. And gratitude. So, we want to end the workshop on a positive note by discussing gratitude and preaching mindfulness. So, according to Harvard, gratitude is associated with greater happiness. It helps people dive deeper into their positive emotions so that they can enjoy good experiences, improve their physical health, and build relationships. People that practice gratitude reported stronger immune systems, lower blood pressure, less insomnia, and feeling refreshed when they wake up. Higher levels of positive thinking also comes from gratitude and also with enjoying your passions and feeling less lonely and more outgoing. It's good to do your best and to not overthink. I see what you're saying, and don't overthink because why bother suffer with something I can't control? That's like an amazing mindset. That is very mature. That is true. That is a good way of framing your perspective. In order to let go of things you can't control, just know that since you can't do anything about it, don't let it make you suffer. Obviously, depending on the severity of the thing, that's when you want to maybe have a professional intervene, but that's a very good mindset to have. So having gratitude allows us to appreciate the value of something so we know exactly how much it is worth. We are less likely to take it for granted. And when we identify the good, we can celebrate it more. According to psychologists, gratitude blocks toxic negative emotions. When you practice gratitude, you can't be grateful and resentful at the same time. Those are incompatible thoughts. So based off that, if you can practice that gratitude, you can cultivate more positive feelings. Being grateful in times of stress and adversity can give you a different perspective on a situation. You can interpret the negative life event from a more positive perspective, and it can help guard against lasting anxiety. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for attending ugh. Thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, ask us directly. You can also email us at generalintelligences@gmail.com. You can check out our Instagram, General Intelligences, or our LinkedIn, General Intelligences. You can also check out our YouTube. We have a lot more videos up there, and we have a lot more events for you. So just, yeah, subscribe.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We hope that you really did enjoy this workshop and did learn from this, and hopefully you do utilize the resources we have provided for you. Again, this video will be posted on YouTube, so there are a bunch of links that you could access. So the video will be there for you if you want to go back to it in the future and just rewatch it, and maybe if you want to have like a reminder of all these things that we've mentioned.